Hey guys, this is Nevermind back again. I've had a few requests to go through the parts list of what I've used to build my mining rigs. I've got two different ones I've built, as you can see in my previous videos. This one I'm just going to go through the 3 gigabyte cards that I've used. So this is all of the ingredients pretty much. I'll go through them one by one. We'll start with the CPU. This is it's an Intel Celeron, if you can see there, CPU. It's one of the cheapest ones you can get. It's a LGA 1151. This model is the G3930. Pretty common CPU. So these are pretty much the cheapest 1151 socket you can get. It's only 2.9 gigahertz, but to run a mining rig you don't need a powerful processor. It doesn't do a lot, so this is perfectly fine. It works well with the motherboard, as you can see, which is the Asus Prime Z270p. This is it here, you can probably see it pretty clearly there. So it's a Z270 motherboard, full size, and the benefit of this one, you've got 6 PCIe sockets, and you've also got 2 M.2 sockets. So the M.2 slots are usually used for SSDs and things like that, but what you can do with these adapters is turn them into a PCIe. So this one is an M.2 to PCIe socket, so you can see there, this is the M.2 slot, that's the part that plugs in, and it converts it to a PCIe. So by using 2 of these, that's how you get the easiest way to get 8 graphics cards working with this one, the Z270p. So again, one of the cheapest motherboards you can get, just keeping the cost down low. As you can see underneath, I won't grab that out, pretty self-explanatory, EVA 650G. Those power supplies, they're gold rated, so they're always going to be on, so you want to make sure you get a solid power supply. I use 2 of those, so combined output of 1300 watts, which is overkill. Main wattage I get for this setup is around 800, so 700, usually sits around 700 watts. Maxed out, let's say maybe 800. So you could probably get away with an 800 watt power supply, but the benefit of using 2 power supplies, like the 650G, is you just have better cable management. So there's 4 PCIe power, 6-pin power rails on this 650G. So by having 2 of them, you have 8 dedicated 6-pin power outputs, and that allows you to put 1 to each graphics card, which works out perfectly. If you've only got a single power supply, you're going to either have to daisy chain or use some kind of converters to try and get the cables going to your graphics cards, but you don't really want to do that because of heat and cable degradation and things like that. So these are the graphics cards. We've shown you this before. These are the 3 gigabyte ones I use. I'll show you the other ones in a second, so it doesn't really say on the front there. These are the standard ones, but you can see, where does it tell you right there? So just get that in there. These are the 3 gigabyte models. I've got a pretty good hash rate with these, but as some people are saying, as the difficulty increases with Ethereum, 3 gigabyte cards won't have enough internal memory in the future, so I'd probably recommend getting some 6 gigabyte cards. The second rig has the Galax cards, which is these ones here. So that has 8 of these ones, and as you can see, that's a 1060. They're both 1060s. This is the 6 gigabyte one. So this might be a little bit more future proof, but who knows what's going to happen down the track. So these are the 8 I've got on the other rig. So the way you get them interfacing with your PCIe slots, obviously you can't plug them directly into your motherboard, so you use risers. These are the risers I've had success with, as you can see on there. So this model uses the SATA power, as you can see on the end there. The benefit of the SATA power is it's a standard connector for your power supply, so you've always got heaps of outputs for these. I have previously used risers that use the Molex power adapter, and I had quite a high failure rate with those. So these SATA powered ones have been a lot more reliable for me. So these are the main parts. Obviously 2 of the power supplies, which I don't have there, and another thing I haven't shown in shot is the RAM. The RAM doesn't really make a difference. So it's a Z270 motherboard, which means you'll be using DDR4. So basically the cheapest DDR4 4GB stick you can find, throw that in there and that'll be fine. The only operating system I've been using has been Ethos, which recommends a minimum of 4GB, but also I've only had it using about 1GB out of that 4GB of memory. So memory, like the CPU, isn't a big deal. The main thing that's doing all the work on these rigs is the graphics card. So they're probably the most important things. So these are pretty much all the parts you'll need for your mining rig. These are the ones I've used anyway. The only thing I didn't mention was the SSD. So Ethos recommends using an SSD rather than a mechanical hard drive. So I guess that's because of the speed and the heat restrictions, and also the power usage. They use a lot less power. So you can pretty much use any SSD you've got, so whatever cheap SSDs you can find. Because they're going to be being used for such prolonged periods, I've gone with the Western Digital. This is one I've used here, the Western Digital Green. This is one of the cheapest SSDs in my area, so that's what I've gone for there. 120GB. I think the minimum install size is 20GB, so whatever you can find, 60, 120, that'll be fine. So that's it. This is the main parts list for my 8 GPU mining build. If you've got any more questions, leave them down below in the comments, and please like and subscribe to Nevermind. See you next time.